Magistrate Ferrero, we are ready to proceed. Participants, Magistrate Ferrero will be presiding over this court trial today.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and get started then. Can I have everybody turn their cameras back on, please? Thank you. Are the plaintiffs ready to go forward?
Apologies, Your Honor. Could you please repeat that?
Are the plaintiffs prepared to go forward?
Yes, we are.
Is the defense prepared to go forward?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And I have a roster where the attorneys are Edward Thompson, Ryan Pack, and Rachel Shaw. What team is that? Is that any of you?
There seems to have been a mistake. That is actually our plaintiff roster. We're trying to send the defense one right now. Sorry about that.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. And do I do I have rosters for the teams? Are you going to be sending that now?
Your Honor, I put a document in the chat that should be titled plaintiff.
Okay, I have that.
I'm sorry, can you reshare it? I must not have been in the room when you posted it.
Your Honor, actually on the document that we submitted, both sides of our team are on there. So if you scroll down, there should be our defense side for Carnation.
Okay. So I have got it. All right, thank you. So the bottom of the page is the roster for this proceeding.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And let me have a roster for the plaintiff. Hold on just one second. I'll make sure. Do the panelists have the rosters now?
Judge, I do not have the defense roster. I just have the plaintiff roster.
Okay. And you can you not scroll up on the chat?
No, they had me jump over to Division 1. I think it was
Okay.
while I was gone.
Could the defense, you say you have the plaintiffs but not the defense, or you have the defense but not the plaintiff?
I actually now have both of them. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So now that we have rosters in and everybody has that, I want to start by confirming that if there are any recordings being taken place, that both teams have approved the taping of the round. Is that correct? I see a lot of heads nodding yes. Is there anybody who says no? Nope. All right. Please be informed that the Colorado Bar Association may be using these images, and you're to be aware of that, and that you, by participating, are granting permission for that purpose. Do you understand, everybody? All right. Is there anyone in the gallery who is connected to a team that is not competing in this round? I need you to please leave this courtroom at this time, but I think this is the final round, so I don't suspect there should be any issues. There will not be any recesses that will be allowed, with the exception of those granted for a health emergency, and especially not between the end of a witness's examination and the beginning of closing arguments. So we're going to just go through without those exceptions. And I know that the scoring panelists are being able to see everybody. If I could hear from you independently, let's start with Mr. Bechtel. Is there any conflict that you are aware of with anyone in the room?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. And then Ms. Bivens, any conflicts?
There is none. Thank you.
All right. And I know I have a third panelist, but I can't see a name. Who's my third panelist?
Angela Swan.
Any conflicts that you can see?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you so much. Just please understand that if there's any disputes arising out of this competition, they must be reported in accordance with competition rules. You have to comply with time requirements, and those will be considered in scoring the individual performances. So be mindful of your time. There should not be any coach or team member seated in the jury box, but I think that only applies to in-person proceedings. And then at this time now, can I please have the plaintiffs introduce their team members? Let's do attorneys first, and then afterwards we'll hear who the witnesses are for you. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Vasuda Goyal. I will be performing the opening statement, the direct for Dakota Weirs, and the cross for Dr. Devin Williams. Permission to introduce my co-counsel?
Yes.
Co-counsel.
Good morning, Your Honor, jury members, and opposing counsel. My name is Shreya Behera, and I'm directing Carson Durst and crossing Blake Doncart.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Tanvi Rami, and I will be directing Dr. Casey Rogers and cross-examining Skylar Weirs. I will also be performing the preliminary matters and giving the closing statements. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Rhea Jackson, and I'm Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Christian Paulson. I will be playing Carson Durst.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Katina Barris, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
All right, thank you. I think that completes the introductions of plaintiffs' attorneys and plaintiffs' witnesses. If I could have the defense please introduce themselves. I'll have attorneys first and then witnesses. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Emily Perry, and I will be performing the direct examination of Blake Doncart and the cross-examination of Casey Rogers. Permission to introduce my co-counsel?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Ryan Pack, and I will be doing the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Carson Durst. I will be also performing the opening statement for the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Edward Thompson. I will be performing the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Anna Benevento. I will be playing Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Olivia Gallo, and I will be playing Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Ben Zabellin, and I will be playing Dr. Devin Williams.
Do we have anybody who has not introduced themselves yet? Okay, I take it that that's not the case. So at this time, I'm going to swear the participants in, and let's start with team members, please. Could the team members please raise their right hands? Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Yes, thank you. And then witnesses, could you raise your right hand? Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truly conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? I'm seeing heads nodding yes, that's great. And then gallery members, which I can't see, including teachers and attorney coaches, family members, and friends. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round. I can't see you, but I know you're saying yes. And then finally, to the scoring panelists, if you would raise your right hands and say and swear, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? All right, thank you so much. I appreciate all your acknowledgements. So at this time, is there any motions or pre-trial matters that the plaintiffs would like to address?
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to reserve all time left over from the direct and cross for their closing statement.
All right, the court will note that. Thank you. Anything else?
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you. Any pre-trial matters for the defense?
Your Honor, yes, we would like to have the same where the time left over goes back to our closing statement.
I will allow it for the plaintiff, but I don't necessarily allow rebuttal to the defense. So I will reserve for plaintiff for rebuttal, but not for defense. Is that what you were asking for?
Yeah, yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And then any other matters that the court needs to take up before we start the trial? All right, thank you. With that said, what I would ask, I think either the monitor will do it or the students and participants will do it. For the witness that is going to testify with the two attorneys, just to save bandwidth, if we could have other individuals turn their video monitors off so that you can use bandwidth and have little interruptions, I would appreciate that. And so we'll conduct ourselves that way. And with that stated, and with the trial to commence, do the plaintiffs wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go right ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Vasudha Goyal, and I am here with my co-counsel to prove to you that Lush Fertilizers is the cause of Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Dakota Weirs is a hardworking, generous, and kind person. She was always thinking about how to help others and improve herself. She was dedicated to her passions in piano and landscaping, but this all changed when she was put in contact with Lush Fertilizers. Because of the non-Hodgkin lymphoma that my client received from the overexposure of Lush Fertilizers, she has been stripped of her ambitions. Her scholarship, her connection with her grandfather, and her passions were stolen. Although she's trying so hard to be strong and supportive during this time, it is a lot for her to bear. Today, we will see Lush Fertilizers try to convince us that their product isn't the cause of my client's cancer, but this is simply false. Lush Fertilizers' usage of Drufo in its products caused my client to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The company tried to hide the health effects from Drufo while fully aware of the dangers presented with the chemical. You will see their CEO, Blake Doncourt, fake innocence and feign ignorance to the problems and dangers he presented. They sloppily try to cover their own tracks and are blissfully unaware to what's going on in the innermost of their own company. In case of Skylar, she's just trying to get back at her sister for not paying her gambling debts. She has so much pent-up rage after her family for not supporting her and supporting her sister that she's here testifying against her. The Drufo in Lush's products was not properly handled and it has led to my client's illness. And this illness has caused my client to be unable to do so many things, pursue their dreams, go to the scholarship they worked so hard for, and Lush Fertilizer needs to be held accountable. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, opening statement, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Ryan Pack, and I'm a defense lawyer within the case, along with my co-counsel, Emily Perry, and Edward Thompson. Any given day in court provides an opportunity to serve justice. This opportunity is presented to all of you today to make a difference. The case today deals with the false accusations of negligence on Lush Fertilizers products regarding the product labeling to prevent any unreasonable risk or harm to its users. However, by doing so, we must not ignore the facts that Dakota Wears, a user of Lush fertilizer, deliberately disregarded these product labels. The plaintiff is directly tasked to prove 4 arguments. At the center of these arguments is the definition of reason and expectation. Lush fertilizer counted on reason and expectation in this case, and yet here we are today. Today, you will hear from 3 witnesses on the defense. You will hear from Blake Doncourt, the proactive CEO of Lush Fertilizer. He'll describe to you his background and accolades as a result of starting Lush Fertilizer from the values of humanitarianism. Additionally, he'll express his unexpected accusations as he positively affirmed his actions. Next, you'll hear from Skylar Weirs, Dakota's twin sister. Skylar is able to look past the unreasonable claims made by her sister and focus purely on the facts of reasoning. Skylar will clearly define her research on modern agritech and its reasoning. Skylar will clearly define her research on modern agritech and effects outlined to reduce the use of pesticides, directly reducing the chances of link with cancer. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Devin Williams, who will clearly state the various other chemicals that Dakota could have been exposed to while disregarding the safety protocols from Lush Fertilizer. From his expertise in toxicology, Devin Williams will be able to clearly define the reduced harmful effects from Lush's use of Jufo while following the expected precautionary risks. Today, you'll hear from plaintiff. First, you will hear from Dakota Weirs, the twin sibling of Skylar Weirs. Dakota, during her time under Haven Landscaping, failed to follow the covering regulations on her skin and faced that were clearly defined in the safety precautions in the labeling of Lush's products, proving Lush's expected precautionary measures to prevent the risk of harm. Next, you'll hear from Carson Durst, a supposed trusted companion to Doncourt family. However, this trust has been corrupted as his expectations of preserving confidentiality to Lush Fertilizer were contradicted. Mr. Durst, who has time and time again failed to provide a valid reason for leaving Lush Fertilizer, did not wait the full 2-year agreement outlined within the confidentiality statements, only waiting 6 months before being employed to the competitor's Terra Greenery, directly going against the trade materials within the agreement. Finally, you'll hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, whose studies hold no peer support to or replication capabilities. Casey has only been able to study the effects of Jufo on landscapers, rather focusing his attention to farmers and gardeners, which is not reasonable in this case. Lush Fertilizer is clearly not responsible for the unfortunate circumstances that Dakota is facing. It is not reasonable to assume Lush is responsible for the lack of cautionary risks of the hazard labels clearly defined on their products to define the specific regulations of use. It's always expected for the user to follow these regulations in their own jurisdictions, facing consequences otherwise. I encourage you all to listen carefully, shed your bias, and see the facts of this case for what they are. Let the law follow reason and expectation.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, call your first witness, please.
Yes, I would like to, sorry about that. I would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Thank you. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, counsel.
May I begin?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Dakota Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, a year ago, I would have said that I was happily living out my dreams at Juilliard playing the piano. But now I can't really say that. Music was a huge part of my life. I have been playing the piano ever since I was a kid, after all. But I guess before all of that, I was also very involved in my community.
Why did you lose touch with the piano, Miss Weirs?
Well, to put it simply, I developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which has inhibited me from being able to play the piano.
I'm sorry to hear that, Miss Weirs. Was the piano important to you?
Yeah, playing the piano has always been a huge part of my life. If not for my diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I could have seen myself playing it for the rest of my life. My acceptance at Juilliard giving me the big push in my music career.
Could you tell me a bit more about playing the piano?
Well, like I said before, I have been playing the piano ever since I was a kid. It holds a special place in my heart because it often reminds me of my granddad and some of the best childhood memories I've ever had. Skylar had her writing and I had my music.
Were you close with your grandfather?
Yeah, my grandfather was actually the one who introduced me to the piano. He was also a very accomplished piano player. And if I'm being quite honest, I think I started playing to get a little bit closer to him.
Are you and your twin Skylar close?
Skylar and I may have our differences. We are siblings after all. But before all of that, we're twins, and that bond will never break. Despite our occasional differences and her many endeavors, my family and I have always given them the utmost support.
How would you say your relationship is with the rest of your family?
I would consider my family fairly close. My parents have always been supportive of my music career, and now with my battle with non-Hodgkin's, which I'm forever grateful for. In fact, my dad was actually the one who helped me see the connection between Drufo and my current situation. And this support has not only been the case for me, but for Skylar as well. Our parents have been helping her unconditionally until it became too big of a financial strain for them.
So your twin had some gambling debts, right?
Correct. Skylar had many extracurriculars, one of her many endeavors being gambling. Unfortunately, they did not fare very well in that activity.
And your parents were paying for these debts?
Correct. Our parents are very supportive and were helping her with her debts until it became too big of a strain for them.
But your parents are paying for your medical?
Yeah, my parents are also helping me with my medical debts, which I'm very grateful for.
Well, moving on from your family, could you tell us more about your non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I think the worst part about being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's is to come to terms with the fact that my passion could potentially come to an end. Despite trying to be optimistic about the fact that I could make a recovery, I know in my heart that my music will never be the same. Losing the ability to do something I love every single day is like living a nightmare that I can't get up from. The only thing I hope that will come out of my situation is awareness. Awareness so that others like me don't suffer from the same consequences of ignorance.
How has all of this affected you?
Well, I think my lack of energy has affected me the most. Much like other pianists, I used to be able to practice the piano for hours every day, perfecting each piece. And especially for intensive programs at Juilliard, having the energy to be able to practice consistently is essential in thriving in a program like that. Unfortunately, my decision to not accept my spot in the program is exactly for my current lack of ability to keep up with this rigorous regimen for a pianist anymore.
Well, moving on from your inability to play piano, did you do any other activities?
Yeah, despite my commitments to being a pianist, I was also very involved in my school as a student body president and involved in many national honor societies. I also love going to my local homeless shelter because it felt great to give back to the community with how much love and support I got growing up. It was truly heartbreaking to see how neglected some members were, truly. But other than that, I also enjoyed landscaping.
You mentioned landscaping. Could you tell us more about this?
Well, I started landscaping when I was around 14 years old. It became one of my favorite hobbies, honestly, and the environment at Havens was very easygoing. We could basically do whatever we wanted and enjoy the luxury of the great outdoors while getting paid.
And during this time, you were exposed to Lush fertilizer.
Correct. I was introduced to Lush fertilizer through my job in landscaping. Much like my coworkers, we were not made aware of the truth behind the rather dangerous product. If we were, we certainly would have taken more precautions to save ourselves from the exposure of chemicals that Drufo so requires.
Did your landscaping company ever inform you of the dangers of Lush?
The landscaping company provided us with no additional warnings or precautions to take in regard to Lush fertilizer. It was precisely why, for this reason, everyone, not just me, but everyone had taken the handling and usage of it quite casually.
Do you have a history of being exposed to Lush?
Other than my job in landscaping, I was not exposed to Lush fertilizer at all in my daily life. I mean, that's what really helped me draw the connection between the two. Skylar is living proof of the obvious difference in our lifestyles.
Could you explain what you mean by living proof?
See, one of the reasons that really helped me corroborate why Lush is the reasoning behind my cancer is my twins' lifestyle. Other than the harmful chemicals that Lush has proven to have by many experts, Skylar's genetics also hold a strong argument. We are twins. Genetically, our susceptibility to illnesses should be the same. The only difference
Objection, Your
between
Honor.
us.
Improper lay opinion. She's giving an opinion on whether or not genetics is involved with the contraction of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which she would not know in her position.
This is something that was mentioned in her testimony, which is something that she clearly stated herself, so she would know this, yes.
Any further response? From
I
the
was just
defense?
gonna say,
No, not from the witness, from the defense. Any further arguments?
Sorry, Your Honor, I just saying that there, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, she's giving her opinion on whether or not genetics is involved with the contraction of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is never actually stated in her witness statement. It is stated that the allergy of grass is contracted by Skylar, the sister, but never actually stated.
And I'm going to sustain the objection. Move on to something else, please, counsel.
Well, thank you. That'll be on Your Honor.
And are you done with your direct testimony of this witness?
Yes, I am. I am done with my direct.
Any cross-examination, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dakota.
Afternoon.
Is it true that your boss told you to wear protective equipment while working at Haven?
Like I said before, Haven's had a very easygoing lifestyle, and while he did tell us, no one really listened to it.
Then your boss, understanding those risks, attempted to get you to wear that equipment, correct?
Obviously not enough, because it was never
Action,
mandated.
improper character opinion. This isn't mentioned at all that the boss had ever tried to mandate them to wear it. They just said that this was something they told it beforehand.
Response.
Your Honor, in the witness statement, it does describe how the boss requested her to wear her safety equipment. And this objection should be, if correct, hearsay. And the exception is 801D2, which talks about how she is allowed to actually talk about her employee or her job at the employed area where the boss, knowing those risks, attempted to request her to wear that safety equipment.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection, allow the question, and allow the answer. Go ahead and answer the question if you can, Ms. Weers.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Ms. Dakota?
Yes, please.
Then your boss, understanding those risks, attempted to get you to wear the equipment, correct?
Like you said before, he requested it, but he never mandated it.
Is it true you used other fertilizers other than Drufo at Haven?
Correct. We did use other fertilizers, but I only started seeing symptoms from my non-Hodgkin's after I started using Lush.
Then you cannot be certain that Drufo caused your ailment 100%, correct?
However, I did only start noticing symptoms of my illness after using Lush.
Please attempt to answer in yes or no. You lost your scholarship, correct?
I didn't lose my scholarship. I was given a 2-year deferral. However, I wasn't very optimistic about my recovery due to the usage of Lush fertilizer.
You may not be hopeful of your recovery, correct? But your doctor is, the doctor that you went to is hopeful of your recovery, correct?
Objection, compound question.
Response?
Your Honor, may I please rephrase my questionnaire?
Yes, please go ahead.
Your doctor's hopeful of your recovery, correct?
While he is hopeful, he has not given me a 100% success rate that I will recover.
But your doctor is hopeful of your recovery, correct? Yes or no?
Yeah, but I know in my heart, my music will never be the same.
Okay. You were a kid when you started working at Haven, correct?
Yeah, I was around 14 years old when I started working in landscaping.
So as a kid working at Haven, Your Honor, may I please Your Honor, may I please show the witness Exhibit 1?
Yes.
For the
Objection,
record,
he didn't submit the evidence into that, yeah.
Right. I don't believe he's asking to have it admitted at this time. He's seeking to have it published for the purposes of showing the witness. The
Yes, Your Honor.
exhibit has not been admitted yet. So go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Do you have Exhibit 1 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Can you please read what it says under hazards?
Keep out of reach of children.
And you stated that you were a child when you began working there, correct?
I would consider 14 a teenager.
But you previously just stated that you did think you were a kid when you started working.
Well, I was 14 years old when I started.
Objection, Your Honor. Non-responsive witness. She's not answering in yes or no or giving me the answer, which her prior testimony confirmed.
I'm going to accept the witness's answer and you can ask another question.
This means that because you answered that you were a kid, this means that Lush Fertilizer expected you to use this product and gave you sufficient warning, correct?
Well, Havens never provided me with any additional warnings when I was working at that age, and they never provided me with extra safety gear for me to wear to be able to protect myself.
My question is they did provide, as you answered, you were a kid when you started working there. Lush Fertilizer did include that they added a cautionnaire for children, correct?
Well, I want to make it clear that I started working as a 14-year-old, and Havens never provided me with any additional warning other than please wear safety clothing, which they did not provide me.
I understand that, but with your prior questionnaire response, you did indicate that you were a child. So my question is as you indicated, you were a child. That means Lush Fertilizer expected you a child to use
Objection,
this.
prejudice. She mentioned she was a child when she was playing piano, not when she was working at Havens.
Response?
Your Honor, I asked when she started working at Haven if she considered herself to be a child, which is in line with this questioning.
Going to overrule the objection, allow the question. Go ahead, answer if you can.
As you stated you were a kid, that using that your prior testimony that you were a child, this means that Lush Fertilizer did expect a child to use this product and gave you sufficient warning, correct?
Well, obviously the warning wasn't that impactful if Havens never provided me with any gear to help me protect myself.
But as a child, that you indicated, you worked with this product as a child, and they indicated that it was to keep out of reach of children, which is a warning, correct?
But we were not provided any additional mandates by my company despite this warning.
Your Honor, objection, non-responsive witness. That does not answer my question.
I think the witness understood your question and answered your question. Move on, counsel.
Okay, that is all. Thank you.
Any redirect for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So, Dakota Weirs, everybody disobeyed this rule to be wearing protective clothing, right?
Correct. Everyone, not just me, did not wear any additional clothing to protect ourselves from the chemicals.
And after first being told to after first being recommended to wear protective gear, your company did not do any further mandation.
Correct. Obviously, the caution provided by Lush Fertilizer was not enough to urge Havens to provide us with any additional warning or gear.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. She's being asked to speculate on the why Haven was not, or why Lush Fertilizer was not, or why Haven was not doing safety equipment.
That's not speculation. That was her saying that she was not given any further mandation to cover up.
I'm going to sustain the objection. It does ask call for speculation. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. That'll be all.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. In order to keep out of reach, in order to keep out of reach of something, you do not need to use protection equipment. You do not need to use protection equipment if you were not supposed to use it at all, correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
You would not need to use protection equipment if it was recommended to you to not use it at all, correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question one more time?
You do not, sorry, you don't need to you would not need to wear safety protection equipment if you were not using this product, correct?
So while we were working in our landscaping company, the environment was pretty easygoing, so no one really wore any protective gear. So correct, I guess.
And if the expectation of it was to keep it out of reach of children, correct? The expectation with that caution was to keep it out of reach of children, correct? That was what the label said, correct?
Of the warning label, yeah.
And if it was kept out of reach of children, you wouldn't need safety equipment, correct?
Can you rephrase that question? Sorry.
You would not need safety equipment if the product Drufo was kept away from children, you would not have needed to use the safety equipment, correct?
Well, as I'm not like an expert in lush fertilizer, I do not know if you would need protective gear if you were a kid or not. Sorry.
Your Honor, I'm done with my redirect. Thanks.
All right, thank you. The witness is excused. Plaintiffs, call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, may I call? Your Honor, may I call Carson Durst to the stand?
Yes. Mr. Durst, can you raise your right hand? You swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, counsel.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Carson Durst, Durst.
And Mr. Durst, can you tell us a little bit about your professional life?
I'm currently the lead product developer for Terra's research and development team. I oversee Terra Greenery's development of its fertilizer and lawn enhancement products.
And what are your educational qualifications for this job?
I went to Arizona State University. I graduated with a bachelor's in chemical engineering, and Lush hired me right out of college.
And how did you start your career?
I started my career working as an intern on the research and development team for Lush Fertilizer.
Now, moving on, what was your connection to the Doncourts?
The Doncourts are like a family to me. The oldest child of the Doncourts, Charles, and I were very close.
And Mr. Durst, since you were quite close to the Doncourts, did that ever affect your work ethic?
No, my relationship to the Doncourts did not affect my performance at work.
And what was your involvement in Drufo?
Well, 3 months of working at Lush Fertilizer, I earned the full-time position as product development engineer. The first big assignment was working on Drufo when I joined. They were in the process of testing the safety of the bonding agent.
And Mr. Durst, do you have any concerns about the product of Drufo?
Well, after a study in 2003.
Objection, Your Honor. In proper lay opinion, this is within the field of expertise. You cannot ask this person on this matter.
Response?
Your Honor, Mr. Durst does have a degree in chemical engineering, and he was part of the research team of Drufo.
I'm going to allow the testimony. At this point, I don't believe the question is asking for an expert opinion. It is just asking for information that Mr. Durst is familiar with as an employee of the company. And go ahead with your question, counsel. Overrule the objection.
And Mr. Durst, did you submit a study based on the carcinogenic qualities of Drufo in mice?
Well, we did submit a study about the carcinogenic abilities of Drufo, and we did think it contained a carcinogen.
And Your Honor, I move to submit Exhibit 4 into evidence. The authenticity has been stipulated. Mr. Durst, do you have a copy of Exhibit 4 in front of you?
Yes.
And counsel, am I hearing that you're seeking to admit it or to present it to the witness? I didn't hear your statement clearly.
Present it to the witness.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Durst, may you read the first sentence of the second paragraph?
Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding the generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period in early in the year.
So, Mr. Durst, what did that sentence convey to you?
The sentence said that that Drufo may contain carcinogenic qualities from the study that we tested and did in June of 2003.
Meaning Lush Fertilizers themselves found concern of Drufo?
Yes.
And was Mr. Doncart involved in these studies?
Not directly, but he did receive the findings of these studies.
And what did Mr. Doncart do about the findings in these studies?
Well, overall, upper management took these findings and said that they were outliers or spurs. But overall, I believe they were trying to make a deliberate effort to fit their findings in their favor.
That is all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Objection, Your Honor. They never admitted Exhibit 4 into evidence. They only presented it.
That is correct. Your cross-examination?
Yep. Hello, Mr. Durst. Is it true that you would consider the entire Doncart family to be a family you never had?
Yes.
And Charles Doncart was your best friend?
Yes, Charles Doncart was my best friend. We played soccer together.
And you said you didn't plan to work for Lush, yes?
No, I did not plan to work for Lush at first.
And you could not find a job before getting hired by Lush, correct?
Yes, I could not find a job before I got hired.
And is it true you oversee Terra's greenery development of his line of fertilizers and lawn enhancement products, yes?
Yes.
You started as an intern on the research and development team for Lush Fertilizer in 2003, yes?
Yes.
Quickly rising through the ranks, passing more experienced engineers without even a prior experience in the profession, yes?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. So you quickly rose through the ranks, passing more experienced engineers without any prior experience in the profession, yes?
Sorry, please rephrase that question again. Having a hard time understanding.
Without having experience in a job within that profession, you quickly rose through the ranks, passing more experienced engineers, yes?
Well, I did have experience. I got a bachelor's in chemical engineering. I think I was pretty experienced.
Let's move on. You had the assignment to help Drufo, correct?
Yes.
And you found a study from England you found, correct?
Yes.
And this study concludes that Drufo might have a carcinogenic effect on rats, correct?
Yes, the study did say that Drufo had a carcinogenic ability inside of rats.
But you could not find any studies that concluded that there are any negative effects on humans, yes?
Well, in-house studies reported that it could have a possible carcinogenic ability inside of humans.
But you could not find any studies that concluded that there were any negative effects on humans, yes? You personally?
Please rephrase that question.
You personally did not find any studies that concluded that there are any negative effects on humans, yes?
You didn't rephrase the question. Please rephrase the question.
Let's move on. So you said that the research and development team hosted an in-house study, yes?
Yes, we did host an in-house study in June.
All right, and then you said there was no concrete evidence that Drufo connected non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, yes?
Repeat the question, please.
There was no concrete evidence within the in-house study that Drufo connected non-Hodgkin lymphoma, correct?
No, the study reported that there were generalized findings of possible carcinogenic abilities.
Meaning that it was only speculation, not concrete evidence, correct?
I mean, there wasn't. Please
Yes or
rephrase
no?
the question. Yes.
Your Honor, permission to show the opposing counsel Exhibit 4.
Yes.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I am showing the witness Exhibit 4.
Okay.
I now show you what has been marked as Exhibit 4, Mr. Durst. Would you identify it for me, please?
This is an email that Jerry Langley sent to all of us working on Drufo at the time, including upper management.
And how do you recognize this exhibit?
Well, I was sent the email, so yes, I do recognize this exhibit.
Okay, and is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember the exhibit to be?
Yes.
Mr. Durst, if we refer to Exhibit 4, you said there was no mention of non-Hodgkin lymphoma within the email either, correct?
No, there is no mention of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in the email, but it does mention carcinogenic abilities inside of humans.
But no specific ties for non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the cancer, correct?
Yes.
And okay, let's move on. The executive team of Lush Fertilizer team confronted you about your job performance, correct?
Yes, they did confront me about my job performance. They sent job reports came in about me. Yeah, job performance came in.
And even being put on probationary status within the company?
Yes, I was.
And you said that a few months later, your performance was abysmal, correct?
The company said my performance was abysmal, yes.
Actually, in your testimony, you said that your performance had become abysmal, not the company. You alone, correct?
Yes.
And after speaking with Blake, you started looking for a new job, correct?
Yes, I did start looking for a new job.
Finding a position at Terry's Greenery, a competitor to Lush Fertilizer in 2006, despite Blake Doncourt.
Rephrase that question, please, or repeat it.
When finding a new job, you found a position at Terry's Greenery, a competitor to Lush Fertilizer in 2006, despite Blake Doncourt, correct?
Yes.
And you signed a confidentiality agreement in 2003 when joining Lush Fertilizer, correct?
A non-disclosure agreement, yes.
And you would agree that a legal document like that is very important, correct?
I mean, all documents are important, so I guess so, yes.
Specifically stating you would not disclose trade secrets 2 years from splitting from the company, yes?
Repeat the question, please.
Specifically stating that after you left Lush Fertilizer, that you would not disclose any trade secrets within 2 years, correct?
Correct.
However, before the settlement, you had been employed to Terrace Greenery before officially resigning from Lush, yes?
Yes.
Working on a new product for Terrace Greenery?
Repeat the question, please. Yes.
And you worked on a new product for Terrace Greenery, correct?
Yes.
That is all the questions I have for today, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Beharo?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, were you involved in the hiring process of your job in Lush?
I mean, why would I? I was not involved in the hiring process of myself.
And Mr. Durst, were your professional opinions valued at Lush after you showed risks of Drufo?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. She is speculating whether or not his opinions mattered to the rest of the company.
Response?
Your Honor, it was in Carson Durst's testimony that he had a meeting with Mr. Doncourt where it did end in a unprofessional situation.
Well, would you like to ask about that?
Your Honor, the question asked towards the witness was he was speculating whether or not his job performance was valued within the company, which is speculation, not anything about Mr. Doncourt.
Well, so I'm going to sustain the objection and you could rephrase your question.
Mr. Durst, Once you found a carcinogenic quality of Drufo, was that when your performance reviews went down?
Yes, that's when my performance reviews went down.
And after your meeting with Mr. Donkar about these issues, you had a intuition of being fired?
Yes,
And you were just looking for job openings, and Terrace Greenery conveniently had a job opening.
yes.
That is all, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, this witness is excused. Call your next witness, please. Plaintiff.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
All right. Dr. Rogers, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead, counsel.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a professor at the University of California, Berkeley in the Horticulture and Entomology Department. I currently teach Introductions to Horticultural Entomology, Horticulture Entomology, Food Crops, and Herbicide Selectivity in Action.
Could you tell us a bit about your educational background?
I got my bachelor's degree in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University, and I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology from UC Berkeley.
And what about your work as a professor?
Prior to, as a professor, I have performed multiple research studies and published numerous scholarly articles on my finding, 4 of which involve Drufo. Much of my research is on the effects of prolonged exposure to different chemicals. My previous research has been used in litigation before administrative advisory boards and to make recommendations to companies and regulatory agencies.
Your Honor, I would like to admit Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert witness in agriculture.
Any objection from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, what's your objection?
Can I ask the Voltaire?
Or Dwyer, yes. Yes.
Thank you. You're an expert in horticulture and entomology, correct?
That's what I currently teach in, but I also have a degree in agriculture and chemistry.
Can you please define horticulture for the court?
Horticulture is the study of insects and how they affect plants. I specifically look at the relation between agriculture and insects, but I also have a strong emphasis on agriculture.
And what is the study of entomology?
Entomology is the of I'm sorry, I'm completely drawing a blank. It's a brand. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Entomology is the study of insects. I'm very sorry.
So horticulture entomology is the study of garden management on insects, correct?
Yes.
And all of your research publications are listed in Exhibit 7, correct?
Yes. May I pull up Exhibit 7?
Oh, please. Sorry. But so you have a total of 6 published pieces in total, correct?
Yes, and 4 of which are involving Drufo.
And you focus on the long-term health effects of prolonged exposure to potentially harmful substances on humans, correct?
Yes.
And then you put together a study on Drufo, correct?
I did.
Your study when conducting with the farmers and the laborers and your control group, and that was on the safety of Drufo, correct?
Yes, I'm aware of my study. I did devote years of my life to performing it.
And you had access to Mrs. Weir's medical records, correct?
I did. I'm a little confused on how this pertains to my expertise in the field.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to oppose the admission of Casey Rogers as an expert witness, as the relevance of insects and garden management is not applicable to, and it was talked about how it was clear, typing was clear, but it clearly wasn't understood to the expertise, as she doesn't really have a firm grasp of her knowledge, and that the medical records, and to compare that to Miss Dakota Weirs herself, it's not applicable, as she is a human and not an insect.
Thank you. Any response, Ms. Rami?
Your Honor, Dr. Casey Rogers has a degree in agriculture and is just teaching in horticulture and entomology. Her degrees are in agriculture, therefore it qualifies her to talk about this. Additionally, she has multiple publications and research that she has conducted in agriculture and agritech, which is what allows her to speak on this and classifies her as an expert.
All right, thank you. I'm going to admit Dr. Rogers as an expert at this time. Go ahead, Ms. Ramey, with your direct testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, could you tell us how you came to work with Drufo?
Well, Drufo caught my attention immediately after hitting the market. I think Lush Fertilizer did not perform sufficient research on its safety, so its product could be rushed to market. So I decided to perform my own research on its safety.
Could you tell us what your study with Drufo was?
My study included a control group that was not exposed to Drufo, a second group that has been exposed to Drufo on occasion, and a group that worked with Drufo regularly, like farm laborers and gardeners. We monitored the different groups for years following the exposure, and the various groups were examined for health conditions and compared to the control group.
And what were your results for the study?
Sadly, we did find that Drufo did in fact lead to an increase in serious health conditions in individuals. Specifically, the study showed higher incidences of cancer, including non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And could you further elaborate on what your results mean?
My study showed that prolonged exposure made people 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. Occasional exposure still led to a 5 times increase in cancer diagnosis. This means there's a major correlation between exposure to Drufo and cancer.
Could you tell us what non-Hodgkin lymphoma is?
Well, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a type of cancer that affects the lymphocytes or white blood cells.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper lay expert opinion.
Okay, response?
Your Honor, this witness has been working on a case that revolves around non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which gives her the experience to be able to infer and talk about it.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I believe that the witness testified that she's familiar with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as part of her study, and you're merely asking for what that is, if I understood your question correctly.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow the witness to answer the questions. Go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Dr. Casey?
That would be wonderful.
Could you tell us what non-Hodgkin lymphoma is?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a type of cancer that affects the lymphocytes or the white blood cells, and the cancer can start anywhere in the body that contains the lymph tissue and then spreads throughout the body.
Is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma genetic?
No, it is usually caused by exposure to environmental conditions like pesticides.
Is there any way to prevent it?
As part of my study, I did test ways to prevent exposure to Drufo. I found that the chemical was usually absorbed through the skin and ended up in the respiratory system. So to avoid this, people should wear long sleeve clothing and medical grade face masks like N95.
Well, moving on from Drufo, are you familiar with Dakota Weirs' case?
Yes, I reviewed her medical and employment records.
And how does Weirs' case relate to your study?
Since Weirs worked at a landscaping company and was in contact with products containing Drufo, she was very similar to the experimental group with prolonged exposure.
What are your professional opinions on Weirs' diagnosis?
Given that Weirs was exposed to
Objection, Your Honor. Improper lay expert opinion.
Response?
Your Honor, I am not asking her, Dr. Casey, to give a medical opinion. I'm purely asking her to give an opinion based on her knowledge regarding non-Hodgkin lymphoma and how it correlates to to Ms. Weirs' case.
If I'm clear, your question was regarding a diagnosis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection, and I believe this is outside the expertise of this witness. So move on to another question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Casey, do you have any reason to believe that Dakota's cancer could have been caused by any other products?
Well, in my years of research, in years of work in the agriculture field, Drufo is, in my professional opinion, what I believe caused it.
Could you please tell us how exposure to Drufo could lead to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, Drufo or other foreign particles from Drufo can diffuse through the skin and lung tissues, and this can damage cells as the particles accumulate in the lymph nodes, which then overwhelms the lymphocyte cells, which leads to cancer.
So if you aren't wearing proper protection, would that mean that you would be at high risk for getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
Response?
Your Honor, may I rephrase?
Yes.
Dr. Casey, would that mean if Dr. Casey, if I'll be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
This is the first time that you have testified as an expert witness in court, correct?
Yes, it is, but my research has been used in many formal settings like court.
It's known that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats, correct?
Yes, the study from the UK did find that.
It's not known without a shadow of a doubt that Drufo is carcinogenic in humans, correct?
In science, you cannot say without a shadow of a doubt. But I can say with all but conclusive opinion that yes, it does.
In your study, your control group was individuals who had never been exposed to Drufo, correct?
Yes.
And you compared that to farm laborers, correct?
Farm laborers and gardeners, yes.
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma weakens the immune system, specifically the lymph system, correct?
Yes, it does, and then the cancer spreads throughout the body.
Lymphoma can start in any area of the body, correct?
In the lymph cells, yes.
It can be caused by exposure to environmental condition, correct?
Yes, like Drufo.
Including pesticides, correct?
Yes, pesticides, fertilizers.
The toxins of pesticides can be absorbed through the skin, correct?
Yes, like I said in my direct statement, it can be if you are not wearing protective clothing.
In your study, you claimed that those exposed to Drufo were primarily exposed by breathing in the chemical, correct?
Yes, or it diffused through the skin cells.
You reviewed Miss Weir's medical records, correct?
I did.
You don't have a medical degree, correct?
I do not have a medical degree, but I have devoted years of my life to learning about non-Hodgkin's for this study, and I do believe I have a better grasp of it than the average person or average scientist.
And you compared this study to Dakota's medical condition, correct?
Yes, like I said, Dakota was very similar to someone from our experimental group.
And the scale bacteria that entered her tissue diffused between her skin tissue, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, outside of character lay opinion. That's not right, but
This was explicitly stated in the testimony that was provided before court for us today, and I just want the clarification so we all have all the facts to make the best decision possible.
could you clarify whose testimony it was written in?
I believe it was in Dr. Casey Rogers' testimony itself.
I'm going to overrule the objection and allow the question. Go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
And the scale bacteria that entered her tissue diffused between her skin tissue, correct?
Yes.
As well as her lung tissue, correct?
Yes.
And this damaged her cells, correct?
Yes, that is how carcinogenic and environmental factors will damage.
You made recommendations for anyone who worked with Drufo, correct?
I did, yes.
And you advised wearing long sleeves to protect their skin, correct?
That is the best way to prevent the toxin from diffusing through the skin, yes.
And pants, correct? As well as an N95 mask.
Yes, I did make those recommendations because that's what my study found, because the Drufo is indeed toxic. It does cause cancer.
And the results of your study were inconclusive, correct?
No, I found that Drufo does lead to a 10 times increase in cancer.
Dr. Casey Rogers, did you complete a testimony before, or affidavit before appearing in court for us today?
Yes, I did.
And do you have that accessible with you right now?
Yes, let me grab it.
Thank you.
I have it.
Okay. Can you please turn to page 27, line 83, please?
Yes, I can. I'm there.
And then can you please read line 83 for us today?
Just line 83 or the whole sentence?
Can you actually start at page 82 and read the end of the sentence and complete it all the way through 83, please?
Of course. The results of the study were inconclusive as protective covers are not typically provided to the workers, and there was insufficient time to study the long-term efficiency of the protective equipment. Ah, I see where the confusion was. This is talking about the study was inconclusive upon the effects of the effectiveness of the protective equipment, but I was conclusive in the fact that it does cause cancer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
A brief one, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Dr. Casey, could you tell us what prolonged exposure to Drufo could do, or what effect it would have?
It will cause cancer.
And could you tell us what your results were to your study regarding the effects of Drufo?
Drufo will increase your chances of developing cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And could you please remind us how many publications you have?
6, 4 of which are on Drufo.
Thank you so much. That'll be all, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Right, the witness is excused. Any other witnesses for the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor. The plaintiff rests.
All right, thank you. Defense, call your first witness.
The defense calls Miss Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Ms. Doncourt, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, counsel.
Ma'am, please state and spell your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Blake Doncourt. Doncourt is spelled D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
Miss Doncourt, what is your profession?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer.
Could you please briefly describe your history with Lush Fertilizer?
Well, starting in 2000, I grew this company to one of the world's largest suppliers of yard and commercial fertilizers. I worked day and night to make Lush the profitable company it is today after years of research, development, and expenditure of significant capital.
Who buys Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is used by governments, businesses, and individuals to produce vibrant, lush, and green grass, which our customers proudly show off.
Can you please share an example of your company's achievements?
Yes, our company has been profitable enough to direct 10% of our annual earnings to charities. In return, those charities are working hard to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint. Additionally, in 2019, Lush was one of the recipients of the prestigious SEAL Business Sustainability Awards.
How has this work aided the environmental movement?
Our company has been instrumental in creating state and national legislation seeking to further educate on environmental issues worldwide. We've started our own charity focusing on cleaning the most polluted areas of the world's oceans.
Have you had personal success due to your dedication?
I've received many awards for my humanitarian work and my work with these charities and other environmental causes. I was personally nominated for the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award in 2020.
Can you please describe the accusations that have put you in court with us today?
Lush and I are being falsely accused of ignoring a known carcinogen in our fertilizer. Casey Rogers asserted that Drufo, a bonding agent in our fertilizer, is linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Have any specific risks been identified?
Our extensive research and testing before putting our product on the market did not identify this as a specific risk to persons coming in contact with our fertilizer.
Has there been any research on Drufo within your company?
Well, as Devin Williams will tell you, our toxicology research and development team found nothing in the product, nor apparently did the EPA.
Have any other studies in your company come up about Drufo?
Carson Durst, a former employee, claims to have done a study after a supposed company email was sent out. However, when we turned over our email system to the plaintiff's lawyers, our computers did not turn up that email.
Your Honor, permission to present the witness Exhibit 4.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you identify Exhibit 4?
Yes, I can identify Exhibit 4.
What do you recognize the exhibit to be?
It looks like the email Carson manufactured about the risks of Drufo.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember it to be?
No, I never received this email. In fact, Lush's researchers have reached opposite conclusions to those that Carson is now trying to assert.
When were you first aware of these concerns?
Well, Carson had every opportunity to bring them to Lush's attention or mine personally. It was his job to look for any dangers so that we could follow up on them. But these concerns never came up until Carson was fired and started working for our competitor, Terrace Greenery.
Your Honor, permission to present Exhibit 5.
Yes.
Ms. Doncourt, do you recognize Exhibit 5?
Yes, I can identify Exhibit 5.
What do you recognize the exhibit to be?
It's an ironclad non-disclosure agreement with Carson Durst to not disclose or tell anyone about the nature of our research and development in fertilizer-related products.
How do you recognize Exhibit 5?
This is the operative provision of the non-disclosure agreement Mr. Durst and I signed prior to his employment at Lush Fertilizer.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember it to be?
Yes.
Your Honor, I now ask permission for this exhibit to be entered into evidence.
Any objection from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 5 is admitted without objection. Go ahead.
Can you please read the first sentence of Section 1 of your non-compete agreement with Mr. Durst?
During employment and for a period of 2 years after the separation of employment for any reason, the employee will not directly or indirectly engage in any competitive business and shall not become directly or indirectly engaged in any business that would benefit from disclosure of Lush's trade secrets.
Does Lush Fertilizer have any competitors?
Terrace Greenery. And now they're about to release a product similar to our fertilizer, but which they claim is safer and carcinogen-free.
Can you please read the first sentence of Section 6, injunction aloud for us?
It is agreed that if the employee violates the terms of this agreement, irreparable harm will occur and money damages will be insufficient to compensate Lush.
Why didn't Lush publish their financial findings?
This type of proprietary information is never shared in public. It would give our company's competitors an advantage.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness Exhibit 8.
Yes, go ahead.
Your Honor, Ms. Doncourt, can you identify Exhibit 8?
Yes, I can identify Exhibit 8.
What do you recognize the exhibit to be?
It's an amortization table.
How do you recognize Exhibit 8?
I created it in 2004 to track finances for Lush Fertilizer.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember it to be?
Yes.
Your Honor, I now ask your permission to admit Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Any objection from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 is admitted without objection. Go ahead, counsel.
Financially, what are the benefits of not baking the fertilizer?
As shown in Exhibit 8, we could increase our profits by 6% the first year and 2% annually thereafter if Lush does not bake the fertilizer.
Where does this extra money go?
In 2004, Lush needed these earnings to pay back our investors for our seed funds.
Why does Lush not bake its fertilizer?
Baking our fertilizer alleviates only a little bit of a risk. Consequently, we did not think it was necessary, nor did federal or state laws.
What was your intention in the creation of this product?
We consider ourselves stewards of good environment and safety practices. Our awards and contribution to decreasing pollution speak for themselves and our good intentions.
Is there anything you would like to say to Ms. Weirs?
I feel terrible that Dakota Weirs has non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It's a terrible disease. Thankfully, it appears Dakota's disease was discovered early, and my understanding is that with such an early diagnosis and treatment, the prognosis for recovery is quite good. I'm hopeful that her recovery is swift.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Donker. I'm going to be asking you a few questions. CEO of Lush Fertilizers?
Yes.
And your company has had multiple environmental and humanitarian-based accomplishments?
Yes, that is correct.
Meaning before any product is released to the public, it'll be well researched?
Yes.
And this would include one of your main bonding ingredients in your fertilizer, Drufo?
Yes, of course.
Institute of In-House and External Studies,
You cut out. Could you repeat that, please?
which had a multitude of in-house and external studies.
Yes.
And didn't Senior Product Manager Gary Langley summarize all of these findings in a weekly report?
Yes.
So this would mean that carcinogenic qualities of Drufo in mice would show up.
I suppose so.
Now, Mrs. Doncourt, may I direct your attention to Exhibit 4?
Yes.
And you believe this is, and you have said this email has not come up in your system?
No, it has not.
Mrs. Doncourt, may you read the recipients of this email?
Recipients: Aaron Stevens, Adam Gwynn, Alex Monroe, Brad Skurlock, Bronwyn Yatabi, Carey, Carson Durst, Blake Duncourt, John Schmidt, Judy Bishop, Paula Duvall, Ryan Hewitt, 7 more.
You were a recipient of this email, correct?
This email was manufactured.
But improper objection, improper character opinion,
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your objection?
improper character evidence.
Response?
This is sorry. In Miss Duncourt's testimony that she provided before court, it said that explicitly that she did not receive this email and it was manufactured, as she did not receive it from Mr. Laney himself.
I think the objection was to improper characterization. I'm gonna overrule and allow the response. Go ahead. Ms. Duncourt.
Could you repeat the question, please?
And Exhibit 4 has already been submitted.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. You went through a
Yes, I would prefer that we don't focus on my personal business right now. I'm sure that Dakota would appreciate that as well, as we're all here for her.
And Mrs. Doncourt, you lost your wife won a quite significant amount of money, yes?
That is correct, yes.
And Your Honor, may I direct your attention to Exhibit 8?
Yeah. Exhibit 8 has been admitted. You can use Exhibit 8.
Oh, Mrs. Doncourt, would you look at the exhibit? Would you just overview Exhibit 8?
Yes, of course.
So Exhibit 8 showcases that you would only lose 2% of your profit if you bake Truffaut.
Yes.
As a company that values itself as such a humanitarian-based company, wouldn't this mean that just losing 2% of your profit be less important than putting at least a potential harm upon your clients?
Well, as you can see in the exhibits, we would still be profitable if we didn't bake our fertilizer. That wasn't our main concern. My main concern is for safety, and baking was unnecessary.
But your lead scientist, Alex Monroe, did say that there might be a link to non-Hodgkin lymphoma from Drufo and that baking it would be an extra precaution.
Baking the fertilizer would alleviate a little risk, but it was not profitable or necessary for us.
So you believe that profit was more important than a safety precaution?
No, I do not.
So then why did you not issue the safety precaution?
I pride myself on safety. That is what I'm most concerned about. There were no contradictions to my personal goals at the time, and I was given no verifiable scientific evidence to contradict them.
You just said your lead scientist, Alex Monroe, mentioned there was a link between non-Hodgkin lymphoma and Drufo.
I did not say that. I said that baking the fertilizer would alleviate a little risk.
That is all, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
You did not receive any cautions from the EPA, correct?
The EPA said that our product was safe. That is correct.
And so did the federal and state laws, correct?
That is correct.
And you did not receive this email, correct?
I did not receive this email.
It was manufactured, correct?
That is correct.
Can you please read the name in the top right corner, please?
Carson Durst.
And it was said in this, it was presented in the exhibit that was referenced as it's in the custody of Carson Durst, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Right. Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. The person who sent the email was Gary Langley, not Carson Durst.
In the top right corner, it says Carson, or top left corner, it says Carson Durst.
Mrs. Doncourt, was the Carson Durst headline part of the email?
I would assume that's because it's a manufactured email.
You're saying, okay, that is all, Your Honor.
All right. The witness is excused. Call your next witness, defense.
The defense would like to call up Skylar Weirs to the stand. Could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Skylar.
One
Weirs,
moment,
and
please. Let me swear the witness first.
Oh, sorry about that.
The witness raise her right hand. Do you swear that the information you're about, the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, counsel.
All right. Could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Skylar Weirs, and that's Weirs.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm an investigative journalist, and I've written lots of important articles on the issues between individual health and corporate policy. I'm also the twin sibling of Dakota Weirs.
And what are some things you do as an investigative journalist?
My profession and the magazine I write for is devoted to promoting scientific skepticism, and I have experience writing several prominent articles on the conflict between that health and corporate policy. Coincidentally, before Dakota was diagnosed with cancer, I published an article in the Rationalist magazine questioning the narrative of the casual link between Drufo and cancer.
And how did you get into writing about agriculture or agritech?
Well, I was actually picked by my editor to write a series on modern agritech, Drufo being a part of that series. I write for a magazine called The Rationalist, a nonprofit organization that specifically challenges the spread of pseudoscientists, superstition, and irrational beliefs, largely looking at the commercial agriculture and GMOs.
And how long did you research Drufo for?
I spent about a year researching all the information I could.
And how did you go about your research for Drufo?
I began by looking at publications that were put out by lots of different agritech companies. And then I delved deeper by looking at the research studies that were in those publications.
And did you have any official or credible sources that stood out to you?
Oh, yes, I did. Actually, I came across most of my research tracking down and reviewing data from the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, and the National Association of the State Departments of Agriculture, or NASDAQ.
And I just wanted to create a basis of your credibility. Do you have a college degree?
No, I do not have a college degree, but I also don't need one to gather this much research. In fact, apart from the big organizations of USDA and NASDA, I highly doubt that anyone's able to pull the level on modern agritech perspective that I do, because I spent a whole year devoting my life to this research.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to tender this witness as an expert within the field of history of agritech research. Under the rule of evidence 702, an expert is not required to hold a specific degree, training certificate, accreditation, or membership in a professional organization. As an investigative journalist, Ms. Weirs is qualified by her experience regarding the several publications under the Rationalist Society that reinforce her knowledge in the agritech research, and has devoted her time to researching credible publications dealing with Drufo.
Any objection from the plaintiff?
Your Honor, I would like to perform a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Ms. Weirs, are you a researcher of any sort?
Yes, I have done agritech research.
Are you a scientist?
No.
How much experience do you have with Drufo?
I spent a whole year devoting my life to the research on Drufo.
And could you tell us how much experience you have with agriculture as a whole?
As I said previously, I spent a year researching agritech.
Your Honor, I move to prevent Skylar from being an expert in agriculture, and that she may not make any comments regarding Dakota's medical diagnosis or the effects of Drufo, as she does not have enough experience to have the required knowledge.
Court's going to find that Ms. Skylar Weirs is an expert in the area of her research with regards to her articles, and I'm going to allow her to testify to that range of testimony. Go ahead, counsel.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. How do GMOs affect lush fertilizer?
We frequently recently published articles on lush fertilizer, which happens to be the target of the pseudoscientific mass hysteria due to the use of Drufo that challenges business of the older sectors of agritech.
And can you support lush fertilizer?
Yes, Lush actually donates 10% of their annual profits to reducing nitrogen contamination in groundwater agricultural communities. It's clear to me that Lush's fertilizer is committed to reducing the impact of nitrogen fertilizer on the environment. It's a mission I truly believe in.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about misinformation campaigns. How do misinformation campaigns in the market begin?
It comes down to domination in the market.
Objection, Your Honor, outside of improper lay opinion.
Response?
Your Honor, she is tendered as an expert witness in the history of agritech research, which falls under these market campaigns that deals with agritech specifically, which is within her field of expertise as a researcher.
All right, thank you. I'm going to allow the testimony. Go ahead.
Would you like me to restate the question for you?
Please.
How do misinformation campaigns in the market begin?
It comes down to domination in the market. Monopolies scare competitors in any industry. There was one instance when Monsanto, an agricultural company, tried to monopolize the maize seed genomics and herbicides industry. They would have generated $15 billion in revenue and $8 million in gross profits each year. However, their competitors launched a massive PR campaign destroying their reputation.
And have companies like Monsanto, what have companies like Monsanto done for agritech?
A recent review of about 150 research studies concluded that GMO tech has increased crop yields over the last 20 years. This is extremely beneficial considering that roughly 800 million people suffer from malnutrition and die from diseases like AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis.
And can you tell me a little bit about what these GMOs are?
Yes, so basically they're genetically modified organisms and they increase crop yields and nutritional value. GM soybeans, corn, and cotton were associated with a 22% overall increase in yield and a 37% decrease in pesticide use. Obviously, this is a huge thing that would greatly benefit all the people in the agricultural industry.
And what have been some causes of these misinformation campaigns?
From what I know, struggling farmers in regions like sub-Saharan Africa and India are hesitant to adopt these GM crops because of the campaign's influence. Because of this, there have been several campaigns for anti-GMO.
And what other ways are GM crops useful to the agricultural sector?
A recent study actually shows that farmers can reoccupy more than 153 million acres of irrigated land that cannot be used by basic crops because of a high salt concentration. To put it in perspective, 153 million acres is about the size of France.
And would you say the modern agricultural products are the safest possible option in the market currently?
Obviously, I know everything.
Objection, Your Honor, improper lay opinion. This witness is not an expert in agricultural technology and she cannot talk about it. She's an expert in history of agriculture.
Response?
Your Honor, I never mentioned anything about technology, but she is an expert under the field of history of agritech, and she's giving her research opinion on whether or not it's the safest possible from her research as an expert.
I'm going to sustain the objection with regards to that area. I believe that that's going outside of the expertise that you argued earlier, and for that reason, I'm going to sustain the objection. Go ahead.
Do modern pesticides have these carcinogens?
I emphasize that everything in the agricultural market has its risk. Modern pesticides do have carcinogens, but they're so much safer than what they used to be.
And what about other agricultural products like grass seeds, for example?
All modern grass seeds have herbicides like 2,4-D that preserve grass but kill weeds.
And what type of weeds are the most common in grass?
Clover weeds.
And how are clover weeds bad for the environment?
Clover weeds pull nitrogen out of the air and they store it in the soil. Without the
Objection,
nitrogen,
Your Honor, relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm trying to lay the description of what these agricultural products do for like common things, just to get an understanding for the complete effects of it from the research.
I'm going to allow the testimony, but please understand that I am concerned about relevance at this time, but go ahead. I'm going to allow it.
Is nitrogen better in the soluble state?
not at all. Nitrogen then soaks deep into the soil after a rainstorm or irrigation, which reaches groundwater and eventually nearby wells.
And how does that apply to Drufo?
Drufo is an incredibly effective bonding agent, which means that a significantly smaller amount of fertilizer and pesticides are used, meaning it's less likely to contaminate the groundwater in its waterways.
And how often would you need to apply Drufo for the desired effect?
You only need to apply Drufo once or twice a year, whereas other fertilizers need to be applied 5 to 6 times. Because it's an effective pesticide, it doesn't require the use of other pesticides like glyphosate and arsenic.
And what is the importance of fertilizers like glyphosate and arsenic?
Well, glyphosate and arsenic have been linked as carcinogens for humans, reported from the International Agency for Research on Cancer.
Through your research, is lush fertilizer safe?
From my research, I found that glyphosate and arsenic are the only carcinogens for humans.
And what does that mean?
It means that there's no research to support a link between Drufo and carcinogens.
All right, and let's get into your relationship between you and your sibling. How is your relationship?
Well, Dakota and I don't have the stereotypical close twin relationship, but we're still family.
And how does your family support you in your work?
Well, I actually chose to forego college for my writing, so I have to work at Applebee's as a server right now just to make ends meet to my family's dismay.
Does your family help you financially?
Well, I'm admittedly a bit of a gambler, sports betting. A March Madness a few years back really put me in a hole I'm still not out of. And my parents were helping me on the side before my mom died, but that was all my mom's doing. So my dad since has cut me off.
And why do you support your brother or, sister?
I just want to emphasize again that the research that I've done, I started before Dakota was diagnosed. I stand by my research because it's the right thing to do. Drufo could really be a game changer in agriculture as a safe alternative to currently used agricultural fertilizers and pesticides.
That is all the questions I have for you today, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry.
May I begin, Your Honor?
Go ahead, Ms. Raden.
You work for the Rationalist, correct?
I do.
And the Rationalist Society promotes scientific skepticism, yes?
Yes.
So what's to say that your articles and your current standing in this case are not under the same agenda?
Well, scientific skepticism is looking in to find the most credible sources to find your information. And so that's what I've done to write this article on Drufo.
Ms. Weers, is it true that you've written articles regarding UFOs, flat earthers, and anti-vaxxers?
I have.
And you've only been known about Drufo for about a year?
Yes, but I spent a whole year researching Drufo, which meant that I got to dedicate all of my time to that.
So you believe that a year of menial research, and no official degrees or education, and no experience is more than enough to be an expert on Drufo?
Well, I'd like to
Objection, Your Honor. She has already been tendered as a witness. Her credibility does not need to be tested right now.
Well, the questions can be asked with regards to what the determination is of the jury as to credibility of the statement. And I believe that's what Counsel Ramey is addressing now. So I'm going to overrule the objection and allow her to ask these questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I can answer. I remember the question. I just want to emphasize that I spent a whole year researching and writing. That means every day I woke up and I did all of that. While I'm working as Applebee's on the side, I was still dedicating all of my time to that.
Ms. Weers, are you aware of the time that it takes for an actual field researcher to gain credibility?
No.
Okay. Well, have you ever actually worked with Drufo?
No, I have not.
Have you ever been out in the field with agriculture at all?
I'm a writer.
Moving on, Ms. Weers. So you claim that Dakota's cancer can be caused by numerous other products, correct?
Yeah.
However, you yourself said that Drufo is a known harmful chemical.
Well, all pesticides are harmful chemicals.
Yes, but you say that it could have been other products, yes?
Yes, there were other pesticides used.
And if it was other products, wouldn't they have shown up in some sort of report regarding her diagnosis?
Sure, I don't really think that's my job to testify on.
Well, moving on. Is it true that your parents were helping you pay off your gambling debts?
They were.
And was it both of your parents or just your mother?
Well, I was under the assumption that they were doing it together, and then my mom passed away, and my dad stopped doing it, so.
So you don't seem to have the best relationship with your father?
Well, my father's really dedicated to paying for Dakota's medical bills, which totally makes sense. I don't think I'm the priority as of right now, which is okay.
And is it true that you fell out with your father because of your decision to not go to college?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm trying to lay foundation for my other questions.
Proffer where we're going with this?
I'm trying to show a motive for the witness.
I'm going to give you some leeway here, but I'm conscious of the objection, so try to get to your point.
Okay. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Rios, is it true that you often told your own twin that she was ruining the family legacy?
I don't believe I often told my twin that.
However, this is stated in the witness statements.
It might have been said once, but I don't think it was repeated.
And you even told her that you think that she is wasting all of your father's money with her medical bills, correct?
You can assume that tensions got pretty
Objection, Your
high.
Honor, improper character evidence. She never said that in her testimony. It can't be used to prove. It can't be used to prove a person acted in conformity with his or her character.
Response?
Your Honor, this was stated in Dakota Weers' testimony, and this was something that was directly said to her.
However, this was not stated in hers and is challenging her reputation. So this cannot be used.
I haven't charged her reputation. I'm purely asking her if this is something she said.
And that is your characterization, counsel, for the defense. I'm going to allow the question because I think it's going towards motive, as it was stated earlier. Go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Please.
And you even told her that she was wasting all of your father's money with her medical bills, correct?
That was stated in the testimony.
So this means that you have a personal, so this shows that you have a personal motive against your own twin, yeah?
That seems to be twisting my words. I think tensions are really high with what's going on with Dakota, and especially with financial things had gotten stressful, so.
Well, even if tensions are high, why would someone assume that medical bills are less important than gambling bills?
I never said that. I mean, I wrote this article before Dakota was diagnosed. That is what I'm testifying on today, my research, not on that.
That'll be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
No redirect, right? Guys, no redirect?
I'm sorry, you said no redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, at this time.
All right, no redirect means no recross. The witness is excused. Thank you. Next witness for the defense.
Your Honor, I would like to call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams. Could you raise your right hand? You swear that the information you're about to testify to is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, counsel.
Could you please state your name and spell out your last name for the record?
My name is Dr. Devin Williams, Willims.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I have led the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer for the past 7 years and have been with Lush Fertilizer for the past 10 years.
Have you worked anywhere else?
I started my career performing methods of forensic toxicological analysis of human samples at the Larimer County office of the Chief Medical Examiner Toxicologist in Fort Collins. I was also an assistant professor at Denver CU Anschutz for toxicology and a visiting associate professor at Colorado State University.
What form of education did you have to receive in order to get these jobs?
I got my PhD in pharmacology and toxicology specialization from Colorado State University in Fort Collins. And I also did a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I am showing the witness a copy of Exhibit 9. I now show you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 9. Would you identify it for me, please?
This is my curriculum vitae, and I recognize it as my personal and professional achievements.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of Exhibit 9.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 is admitted without objection.
What conclusions have you drawn from your previous education and work experience?
I understand how to research and evaluate test results to determine the fate and effects of potentially toxic chemical agents, essentially meaning I know how to tell if a substance is going to harm the average human and how to neutralize it.
Your Honor, the defense requests to move Dr. Devin Williams as an expert witness in the field of toxicology.
Any objection?
Yes, I would like to perform a voir dire.
Go ahead.
So you were promoted quickly at Lush Fertilizers, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
You were promoted quickly at Lush Fertilizers, correct?
If you would consider 3 years quickly, yes.
And it was in your best interest to protect the company.
To protect the company, I would say so.
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation, there's no question about protecting a company. I don't understand where that's coming from with the foundation of promotion.
Response?
I will just move on from that. So you have studied forensic toxicology, correct?
Yes.
So would you say that gives you a basis to be talking about toxicology?
I would say so, yes.
Oh, but forensic toxicology is post-mortem.
Forensic toxicology is postmortem, you say?
Yes.
Although it is post-mortem, it's still dealing with the human body, and human biology, it still exists, and this still remains constant before and after death.
Post-mortem, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if I would like to admit Dr. Devin Williams as a forensic toxicology, meaning he can only give opinions of toxicology on post-mortem, not currently alive beings.
Response?
Your Honor, we talked about previous education as well as work, as well as other places he worked. And in the curriculum vitae, if you reference Exhibit 9, it talks about how he actually worked at multiple other places, which he listed. He worked at the University of Colorado, Denver CU Anschutz Medical Campus, which was mentioned, as an assistant professor of toxicology and pathopsychology, division of pharmacology, toxicology, and medicinal chemistry. This means he is far qualified to talk about it just because they played just because they talk about specifically post-mortem. He has multiple other avenues that allow him to be an expert in this situation.
The court's going to admit Dr. Williams is an expert in toxicology, and I'm not going to limit him to post-mortem testimony. Go ahead with your questions, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. What was your original job with Lush Fertilizer?
I was originally assigned to fill in as a technician for timeliness and fertilizer development because 50% of the development had recently left.
How did you become the lead of the toxicology research and development labs?
I was promoted 3 years after signing on as a technician to lead the labs and to largely oversee work on the environmental impacts of fertilizers.
What does this job entail?
I'm a toxicologist by training and work to understand how biological systems respond to environmental interventions. And currently I'm overseeing the production of DRUFO, of fertilizer in our company.
Can you describe what fertilizers do?
Fertilizers enhance the growth in plants in 2 ways, either by adding nutrients or by enhancing the effectiveness.
Objection relevance?
Response?
Your Honor, this objection, we have to build, if we're talking about toxicology and DRUFO in general, we need to understand, or the jury needs to understand what fertilizers do in general in order to understand the application of the knowledge we will bring up.
Overruled. Go ahead. I'm going to allow the testimony.
As I was saying, fertilizers enhance the growth of plants in 2 ways, either by adding nutrients or by enhancing the effectiveness of the soil by modifying its water retention and aeration, both of which affect environmental balances.
How have fertilizers come to be?
Well, once the Green Revolution took hold, agricultural production increased by 800% in some areas between 1960 and 2000 due to a change in nitrogen-fixing chemical processes, changing from single nutrient fertilizers to macro and micronutrient fertilizers.
How did the increased use of fertilizers lead to environmental effects?
Well, as we came into the current century, a problem known as eutrophication occurred.
How does eutrophication affect the environment?
Essentially, eutrophication is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural runoffs. Basically, the extra nitrogen that fails to bind the soil are carried into bodies of water, leading to dense algae blooms that kill marine life. It's also important to note that these algae blooms harbor bacteria harmful to humans.
How are you using your expert knowledge to mitigate fertilizer's environmental impact?
Currently, as the head of toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, we are building a fertilizer known as Drufo that is better for the environment.
Do you have somebody that oversees your operations?
Yes, when I first began working, CEO Blake Doncourt requested for me to keep Drufo industry leading, environmentally aware, and cost effective. I'm determined to meet these goals.
Do you believe in these goals?
Yes, I see myself as having a responsibility to consider why things work and if they will affect the environment rather than just focusing on project standards.
How is Drufo different from other fertilizers?
Drufo enhances the fertilizer's ability to bind nitrogen to the soil, and as we discussed above, other fertilizers lack that same ability.
In simple terms, can you describe what this means?
In simple terms, it means that less fertilizer needs to be sprayed, less nitrates are washed away into the soil, less marine life is harmed, and there's also a less chance of the humans being harmed as a result. Essentially, Drufo is a revolutionary product that's far better for the planet than other previous fertilizers.
Then why is Drufo banned within the EU?
The European Union Nitrates Directive will not allow any fertilizers that produce a surplus amount of nitrates during lab tests. When the right bacteria are added, a surplus of nitrates are created, but these bacteria are far more different than what are found in nature.
What does this mean?
Essentially, if you put Drufo into a petri dish with the right bacteria, you'll get the same amount of nitrates as a regular fertilizer.
Are there any studies on if Drufo causes any other bodily harm?
There are claims and studies that Drufo may cause cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma. These claims and studies have not been correlated with a statistically significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma or any other cancer.
Are there any studies, are there any specific studies that are referenced?
The only study being referenced is Dr. Rogers' study, and by no means is that valid.
Why is Dr. Rogers' study not valid?
There are millions of confounding variables that have given the subjects Drufo because of Dr. Rogers' study, because he did not set a control for his subjects, meaning we can't point to a single factor. Additionally, the study has not been peer-reviewed nor replicated.
Is the peer reviewing process important?
Extremely important to remove bias from the study. Without the peer reviewing process, there's nothing proving that the experimenter did not sway the results from confirmation bias.
Is the process of replicating the experiment also important?
Yes, it's also extremely important because if you just run the study one time, it shows nothing. It's like in science class when teachers always made us do 3 trials because that's the only effective way to show that the results are valid.
What makes you think Dr. Rogers did neither of those things?
I believe Dr. Rogers didn't do any of these things because there's simply no evidence of it being done.
Based on your expert opinion, does Drufo cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Based on my extensive valid research and a lack of valid counter evidence points straight to the fact that Drufo does not cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma and is better for the overall environment than any other substitute.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's it.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Well, you've been working with Lush for the past 10 years, right?
Sorry, Your Honor, I was muted. Continue. If you could rephrase it for my witness. Sorry.
Oh, you've been working with Lush for the past...
2 things. Time out. I think the doctor is muted. 1, he needs to unmute.
We're using the same computer because he's across the room, but because it just makes it easier because we don't have to mute. So,
okay. Well,
sorry.
I just want to make sure that he hears the question and I hear his answers. So I'm
yes, Your Honor.
This goal for interrupting you. Go right ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. You've been working with Lush for the past 10 years, right?
That is correct.
So would you say you're heavily involved in the company?
Yes, I would say so.
And you could stand to make a large profit if your testimony in this case goes well, correct?
I would make a large profit whether the case goes our way or the opposite way.
Well, moving on. Lush Fertilizers is sold globally, right?
That is correct.
But isn't Drufo banned in the European Union?
Yes, it is banned in the European Union for the production of more than incidental nitrates when bacteria is added that does not occur naturally in nature.
Doesn't the European Union also ban it for a possibility of carcinogenic effects?
They do not.
Objection. Improper character evidence. In your own testimony, you stated that the European Union bans Drufo for possibly carcinogenic effects.
So counsel, just to be clear, I don't think you're intending to object, but you're alleging that he is not testifying consistent with his statement. So I understand.
I am.
That's why I'm not asking for a response to your objection, but I will allow you to ask questions for clarification. Go ahead.
So, okay. So the European banned Drupo for carcinogenic effects, right?
They did not.
Um, would you give me a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, okay. I am okay. So, okay. So is it, so moving on from that, is it true that your entire education from undergrad to PhD was completed at CSU?
That is correct.
So that would mean you earned your bachelor's degree from CSU.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. We have already determined what his education standards are.
I
So
am leading up to something.
Go ahead and respond. Any
I'm leading up
response?
to a question of concern I have over the validity of the expert.
Thank you. I'm going to overrule the objection, allow the questions. Go ahead.
Your Honor, permission to present Exhibit 9 to the witness.
Yes, go ahead. It's been admitted.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Devon, would you please read the section under education on Exhibit 9?
Happily. Colorado State University College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions. PhD, Pharmacology and Toxicology Specialization, 2003. MS, Forensic Toxicology Specialization, 1998. University of Utah, Practisium and Certificate Program, Pharmacotoxicology, BS, Toxicology, 1993.
Your Honor, may I present the witness with his affidavit?
Yes.
Dr. Devon, would you please read line 9 starting from my education?
My education from undergrad through PhD was completed at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. I also did a specialized.
Dr. Devon, that'll be all. So in your affidavit, you say that you did your undergrad at CSU, but in your evidence, in the exhibit, it says that you got your undergrad from the University of Utah.
That is incorrect. In fact, the
Objection, Your Honor. I still don't see the relevancy, as she had the opportunity to speak on the witness's credibility with education and any questions when both the exhibit was entered, as well as when the expert witness was entered. I don't see how this applies exactly to anything within DRUFO or any other practicalities.
Response.
I think this entirely shows how credible the witness is in what he's saying about DRUFO and his research. He doesn't even know his own education, so how could we trust him with what he's saying?
So the question is whether this issue goes to admission of him as an expert or it goes to credibility. And I believe
this is an issue.
Counsel Gold, I'm not asking for you to say anything more. I'm
Sorry,
stating that this goes to the questions regarding credibility, not whether he's going to be admitted as an expert or not, and whether the jury can rely in essence on his expert opinion. So I'm going to allow the questions. I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead with your question and your line of questioning, Ms. Gold.
Okay, well, that'll be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Any further redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, counsel.
So as well as achieving not only a degree from not from your degrees from Colorado State, from PhD to get your master's. You also worked. It's also true that you worked at the University of Colorado, Denver CU, and Schutz Medical Campus Graduate School as an assistant professor of toxicology, correct?
That is correct.
And it's also true that you worked at Colorado State University as a school for the School of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions, visiting associate professor of toxicology.
That is correct.
And referencing Exhibit 9, under those question jobs, were they after you received your degrees for education?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. That's all.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Presenting the witness with, may I present the witness with Exhibit 9 again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Devin Williams, could you read the dates on when you received your education and PhDs?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. She already asked him to read the specific section under education.
I'm just asking for the dates.
Overruled. Overruled. Finish your questions, please. Go ahead, Ms. Cole.
Right. Yeah, so could you please read the dates from which these graduates were received?
Would you like me to go in chronological order or top to bottom?
Yes, go in chronological order, please.
Okay. BS Toxicology 1993. MS Forensic Toxicology Specialization 1998. PhD Pharmacology and Toxicology Specialization 2003.
And could you also read the dates of your professional experiences?
Larimer County Office of the Chief Medical Examiner Toxicologist, 1993 to 1995. University of Colorado, Denver CU and Schutz Medical Campus Grad School, 2004 to 2011. Colorado State University, School of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions, Visiting Associate Professor of Toxicology, Fort Collins, 2003 to present.
Okay, that will be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, the witness is excused as there was direct, redirect, cross, and recross. Call your next witness, defense.
Your Honor, that's the last witness.
All right, thank you. Does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and are the parties prepared to go to closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Can I have the plaintiff's closing statement first, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
May I begin, Your Honor?
Yes.
A company trying to cover up their own tracks. A CEO who doesn't even know her own company's studies and is more stressed over her divorce than to care about her products. That is what we saw today. The company never bothered to test the carcinogenic effects in humans, even though it was shown in rats. She didn't even see her own company's confidential email. What a sloppy job they did. And it all adds up when you look at it. They ignored tests and concerns from Carson. They did not execute the proper studies they should have, and nor did they properly check all the effects of fertilizer on humans. She didn't even check her own emails and is now claiming that they're fake. Lush Fertilizer claims to be an environmentally beneficial company, but if that were true, they would have stopped Drufo after it was banned from the EU instead of making other products to capitalize on. Additionally, their expert witness, Skylar Weirs, has no professional education or any sort of credibility. She works for The Rationalist, which is a magazine that promotes scientific skepticism. How does any of this qualify her as an expert? Not to mention her gambling issues and her family quarrels. She told her own twin that she was ruining the family legacy and taking all their family's money. Not only do these portray her as an incredible source, but they display her character. And their last witness, Dr. Devin Williams, works for the company. So why would he be opposed to his company? And his opinions are biased and geared towards his job safety. It's basic common sense that they're protecting their position. And not to mention, he doesn't even know his own qualifications. In his affidavit, it says that his education is all at CSU, yet his actual document of certification says otherwise. How can you trust someone who doesn't know where they went to school? The defense today presented you three witnesses: a CEO who did not properly test her products, Dakota's twin Skylar Weirs, who has long had something against her, and lastly, Dr. Devon, who is the company's own employee with biased opinions. Members of the jury, what you saw today was the defense failing to do what they are supposed to, simply defend. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Defense, closing statement.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Perry, and I'm a defense lawyer in this case alongside my co-counsel Ryan Pack and Edward Thompson. In the case the prosecution has presented to you today, there is insufficient proof to convict Lush Fertilizer of this crime. In this case, the plaintiff is tasked to prove 4 statements. First, they must prove Lush Fertilizer manufactured a product containing Drufo. Second, they must prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care in order to prevent any unreasonable risk or harm to product users. Third, that Dakota is a reasonably expected person Lush should have expected to use their product. And finally, that Dakota had damages that were caused by Lush's negligence. The words reasonable and expected are emphasized. If you find that even one of these 4 statements has not been proven, then your verdict must be not guilty. First, I would like to discuss the relationship between Carson Durst and Blake Doncourt. There are only a few concrete facts in this relationship, which I will outline for you. Evidently, Carson Durst broke his ironclad and non-disclosure agreement. Mr. Durst did not wait the full 2-year period after leaving Lush Fertilizer as outlined in Section 1 of the contract. Instead, he waited 6 months until he was employed at Terrace Greenery. By doing this, he directly engaged in another competitive business that would benefit from the disclosure of Lush's trade secrets. Mr. Durst went against his word, as he had previously signed this contract. When would he keep his word? Not expected, not reasonable. Furthermore, Ms. Doncourt has been accused of monetary motivation for not baking Lush Fertilizer. Only a little risk would be alleviated from baking the fertilizer, a fact corroborated by the federal and state laws, the EPA, and the Toxicology Research and Development Team, counting on expectation and reason. Next, I would like to address Dr. Casey Rogers' study. The manner in which the study was conducted was not accurate. Ms. Rogers looked at Drufo exposure for farm laborers and gardeners, which she compared to her control group. Landscapers are not farmers nor gardeners. Different lifestyles put people into different environments, thus creating different exposures. It's an injustice to Ms. Weirs to concede to the study as it's not valid to her experience, not reasonable. Lastly, in all of this discussion, both sides are able to agree unanimously that exposure of the skin and face are detrimental towards the development of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Both the plaintiff and defense representatives, Dr. Casey Rogers and Dr. Devon Williams, stated this fact. Dakota Weirs openly admitted that both her skin and face had been exposed during her employment at Haven Landscaping, where she was not just using Lush Fertilizer. Who knows what other chemicals Dakota has been exposed to? Not expected, not reasonable. As seen in Exhibit 1, the Lush label explicitly states under its safety recommendations that protective clothing that covers exposed skin as well as respirator, an N95 mask, is protective clothing that covers a N95 mask is recommended to ensure individual safety. Even Dakota's boss reinforced this message to Haven Landscaping, proving their negligence. And after all, when initially asked if she was a child or a kid, if not, the initial response by the witness was that she was. That was her instinct, that was her gut reaction. And besides, 14 is under the employment age. Not expected, not reasonable. Dakota claims that everyone failed to cover their skin and faces during the summer because it was hot. Not reasonable. As explained by expert Skylar Weirs, glyphosate and arsenic are the only concrete carcinogens that can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. All pesticides, when working with pesticides, you put yourself in a dangerous situation that's crucial to your surrounding and your environments, and that you're willingly putting yourself at risk. Because Lush Fertilizer includes the necessary safety precautions in the label of their product, proving that Lush went to cautionary measures in attempts to prevent any risk of harm. Based on that fact alone, your verdict is not guilty. The plaintiff is banking on the appeal of the motion. They're not asking for compensation. They have no, and by the sheer amount of confusion and uncertainty by both the witnesses and the attorneys themselves, there is no concrete facts nor evidence to convict Lush Fertilizer of this crime. Lush Fertilizer is not to blame for the unfortunate diagnosis and the aftermath that followed. Safety is very important, and it counts on expectation and reason, which were violated in this case. When casting your vote, think of Dakota and think of your future kids or grandkids. For them, create a world where you can rely on reason and expectation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The defense claims that the plaintiff failed to prove that Lush has any products with Drufo in it. However, Drufo was made by Lush. And additionally, on all of their products that have Drufo, there are not clear labels. There are only recommendations, and recommendations are not requirements. So anyone would do as they would like to, because it is a recommendation. Additionally, there has been lack of care about the safety, and they care more about profit, which was seen from Blake Doncourt's testimony today, as they chose not to bake just because it was expensive and they would gain more profit if they didn't do it. Next, they talked about Dr. Casey Rogers' study and how her different groups are what made it uncuttable. However, those exact differences in her vastly different groups are what strengthen her study, as they take into account all outside factors. These outside factors that make each group vastly different show the true potential of Drufo's effects. And next, the witness's age does not matter here. What we are here for is to address the unreasonable risk that Lush took into not properly making sure that their product was safe. We are not here for emotions nor any drama show. We are here to prove that a company did not do what they were supposed to when they didn't make sure that their product was safe. The company is who took an unreasonable risk, not Dakota Weirs, who is simply trying to do her job. That will be all, Your Honor.
Thank you. That completes the closing statements for the trial, and the trial has concluded. I'm going to give the panelists an opportunity now to review their scores and take a moment to complete those scores. And then when they're completed, please come on the screen, and I'll have all of the competitors come on the screen now, please. And then once the panelists have completed their review, I'll go ahead and we'll go to commentary, okay? And if I can get a thumbs up from the panelists if they've completed, thank you, Mr. Bechtel, I appreciate that. Ms. Swan, thank you. And the last person I'm waiting to hear from is Ms. Bivens when you're ready. Ms. Bivens, are you there?
I am so sorry. I am here. I'm experiencing technical difficulties.
No worries, no worries, no worries.
It's 90% done.
Whenever you're ready, just let us.
Okay, thank you.
Go right ahead, no worries.
I do apologize. It is submitted.
Great. And do you have video or you just have audio?
I just have audio. I do
No worries.
apologize.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that you could hear us and everything. Great.
I can.
All right, so awesome. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to start by thanking all of the participants and let them know that I was so impressed with how you conducted yourselves. And it's just impressive to see the time that you've dedicated to the case. And it's very impressive. I'm a magistrate in Arapahoe County. I'm in court on a daily basis and dealing with attorneys and also pro se parties, meaning people who represent themselves. And it's impressive to see how you are speaking at a level where attorneys speak, and it's really appreciated that you dedicate that kind of time to do such a good job. I'm going to turn it over to the panelists now, so that they can give you commentary first, and then I might have some additional comments, but I think I really like to hear from the panelists because they're looking at this with a different eye. And so if I could start with Sarah Bivens first, I would appreciate it. And go ahead. You can unmute yourself and talk to the panel. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they did an excellent job. Everybody was very well versed in what they were speaking about, the terms, the objections, the asked and answered. I was pretty impressed. I was really impressed because that's what I see every day, and that they totally crushed it. It was really impressive, very impressive.
I agree. Can I hear from Mr. Bechtel?
Thank you, Your Honor. I echo the comments of the other two. Amazing job. Really, really impressed with all the witnesses in this case. And because there were great witnesses, there was great cross-examination. Miss Jackson, wherever you are, there you are. You are a nightmare to try to cross-examine. You did an amazing job. I'm never going to get anything out of you. But a couple of things with cross-examination. Some of the questions gave Miss Jackson a chance to tee off. What you want to do is keep it short and get questions that she's not going to be able to argue with. For example, Mr. Pack, you asked the second witness, you quickly rose through the ranks, passing more experienced engineers. So obviously you're saying that, he got favoritism and all that kind of good stuff. That's automatically going to cause them to be defensive. If you say you were promoted quickly, how can he argue with that? Just make it short and get them to agree or disagree. When a witness is being squirrely, don't let them go. One of the questions was, so you recommended long pants? And the answer was yes, because it's been shown to cause cancer. Okay, so I don't even remember who that witness was. I think maybe Dr. Rogers. They got to get their point across again. Go back after them. So that is a yes, you did recommend long pants. Don't let them keep shoving it down your throat. If they answer the same way again, that shows the jury that they've got their own agenda. I think it's Behera, you were talking about the email, right? And every time you talked about Miss Doncourt about the email, she referred to it as fraudulent and made up and all that. That's her opinion. Get her to agree with things on the email. Wouldn't you agree that this email is from Jerry, whatever her name is? Isn't Jerry an employee of your company? Wasn't she in charge of the DRUFO? Get things that she has to agree with, because if you keep saying, talking about the email, she's going to keep referring to it as fraudulent. Get the facts that you can. That email is super important to your case. Get her to agree with everything that she will agree to with it. One thing that I was very impressed with, you weren't afraid to go to your co-counsel. Don't ever be afraid to say, can I have a minute? Talk to your co-counsel, right? You're forming your next questions. They can help you. And last thing I want to bring up is Miss Perry. Very impressed with your instincts. One of the things, the judge has a lot going on. You kept objecting to outside of the scope. You were absolutely right. But because the judge has got so many things on his mind, what you need to do is you need to remind the judge, Dr. Rogers was submitted as an expert in agriculture. So when he starts talking about lymphoma and health and all this stuff, you need to say, Judge, I'm objecting. The witness was qualified as an expert in agriculture. Commenting on lymphoma is outside of his area of expertise. So, remind the judge, this is, every time somebody's qualified as an expert, write down exactly what they're qualified as, and then remind the judge. Because when you tell the judge, he's been admitted as an expert in crops, what does he know about cancer? The judge is going to be like, yeah, that does make sense. However, so just remind the judge because it always helps them. And finally, Vasuda, you did the opening statement. Amazing. Really liked it because you spoke slowly. It was easy to understand. Very, very powerful when you're moving slowly and speaking at a normal pace. Everybody else, 1,000 miles an hour. I know that we're under a time constraint, but Vasuda, very, very effective, very powerful. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Ms. Swan, would you like to have any comments?
Well, I don't practice law at all. I teach veterinary medicine, so I'm definitely a fresh pair of eyes. I do work with USDA though, but it was so much fun to watch. Everyone did a wonderful job. I do kind of want to piggyback on the fact of the talking fast. I know that as a teacher myself, I know we can get really nervous and you start speeding through what you want to ask. I know the witnesses kept saying, can you repeat the question? And I'm sure half of the time it wasn't, I don't understand it. It was, what did you say? It was that kind of, would you repeat the question? So you definitely would want to slow down. I even struggled sometimes to understand what some of the questions were to the witnesses. The witnesses were so much fun. I cannot say half of your last name. So I'm just going to say, the defense witnesses like, Anna, Olivia, just bravo. That was awesome. Emily, I loved your enthusiasm, your energy. That was so much fun. You were just so quick and on it to the point. So just good job all around. That's all I've got to say.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that commentary really helps a lot. And I will say, along the same lines, I will say this with regards to speed, with trying to get things in quickly. If you feel, especially on closings, if you feel, or even an opening, that you have to rush, maybe you've got too much content. Maybe your content needs to pick some really solid, pick your top 3, 4 things, and then after that, additional, but make your 3 massive points first. Your cutters, I call them, the ones that make a dent. And then you go to additional, but you always take your time on your very important points, slow and deliberate. Mr. Pack, when you're questioning, very good use of the yes. However, break it up a little bit. If every one of your questions ends in yes, a jury can lose focus on what was that last one he said. I know he ends them all in yes, and then they're going to start thinking it's yes, but they're not going to remember what came before. So you have to break it up a little bit, like maybe a couple of really hard points, yes, and then take another soft point where you don't have to say yes, because then it sounds like the witness is just, it's not really becoming testimony. It's becoming more of a route response, and that's a good thing, but save it for a really good point before you use it for every point. But it's good. It's good control of a witness. And then the witnesses were incredible. That was so much fun. The CEO, Anna, was like, you really were like a CEO of the company, and hey, don't pick on my company. But I will say, like, some of the interesting things is it was like a CEO about the money, like, hey, we do nice things for people, but we have a bottom line. And I know that the use of the spreadsheet that said, well, it's only a little bit of our overhead would have cost to bake. That would have been a good thing on closing to say, for a little bit of money, great harm. So that can come back to bite you. So be careful how much you emphasize something, because then whoever hears it is going to be like, yeah, I remember when she said that. And then they're going to be like, and ow, that really makes impact on me. But I think you all did such an awesome, there's not much to tell you what to do. And you'd only get better with doing it more. And you all clearly were vested in the outcome, which means you didn't treat this as a fake exercise. You could tell you really wanted to do well for your client. Emily, just remember, when you're dealing with negligence, it's not guilty. You're not trying to find somebody guilty. It's negligence. So you just want to be clear on that you had the right attitude, but you just want to be careful when you're asking somebody for money or not to give money. Don't change it to something different. But I know that happens, but no worries. But everybody did a great job. Really, I was so impressed, Mr. Thompson, you as well. You really were vested too when you were defending your witness. And Dr. Devin Williams, wow, I tell you what, I thought you were the doctor. You were the man. So I really enjoyed doing the whole process, and thank you so much for the opportunity to do it. And I applaud you all. Good job.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All
Thank you,
right,
Your
good
Honor.
luck. Don't give up. Do it again and do it again and do it again.
Thank you,
okay?
Your Honor.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
Thank you.
Let's